15 minutes tonight here on BBC One, Everyman talks to some of the wives and daughters of the Birmingham Six, exploring the pressures of family life with a husband in prison and their campaign to prove the men's innocence. First, the main evening news with Michael Burke.
More blizzards paralyse half the country. Several people have been killed and thousands stranded in the Arctic weather. And British hostages arrive in Baghdad as the airlift home begins. Good evening. More bands of sleet and snow are sweeping across Britain tonight after 2 days of Arctic weather that have brought much of the country to a standstill. Several people have been killed, thousands have been trapped in their cars, and more than 500,000 were left without electricity. The worst of the weather was in the Midlands and the north of England. One of those who died was found at Mansfield, frozen to death in his car. A farmer who went missing at Lofthouse in Yorkshire yesterday morning was found alive in a snow hole he dug with his hands. Thousands of motorists were trapped on the M6 in Warwickshire for 30 hours. They were finally rescued tonight. Many schools will be closed tomorrow. In Derbyshire, all 500 schools will be shut. All Nottinghamshire schools and colleges will stay closed. And head teachers in Worcestershire are telling parents to keep their children at home.
In North Yorkshire, where dozens of Dales villages were isolated by the sudden blizzards, the search resumed at daylight for a missing farmer. The 55-year-old man had gone to tend his sheep at Lofthouse yesterday. An air-sea rescue helicopter from RAF Leconfield joined the operation, but as fears grew, the farmer was found in 4 foot of snow. He was airlifted to Harrogate District Hospital, suffering hypothermia.
And he slid into a 5-foot snowdrift. And then he built himself an igloo, but he tells me he didn't make a very good job of the top, so the snow came in and sort of froze his face up a bit. But he said, I'm not going to go to sleep in the night, because people die if they do that.
In many parts of the north, thousands of homes were without telephones or electricity after gale-force winds and heavy snow had damaged power lines. Engineers worked through a second day striving to restore supplies, but many homes faced another night without power or communications. In North Derbyshire and Yorkshire, all available helicopters were pressed into service to ferry repair workers to damaged installations. The weatherman this evening warned that there could be more snow and high winds would cause drifting. One short stretch last night of what became a never-ending journey across the Midlands. Families who'd already endured hours stuck on motorways bedded down on the A45 outside Coventry. Local hotels threw open their doors and floors to refugees who'd been heading for weddings, dog shows, but mostly just home. Some suffering frostbite, diabetics anxious for insulin, all with tales of desperate remedies on the road.
We got stuck on the M6 just south of Birmingham. People were dismantling the crash barriers so that they could turn around and go home. But our coach couldn't get through, so we pressed on here. Coach driver's been absolutely brilliant.
First Light saw the nearest thing to officialdom on the A45. Seeking, not able to give information, were a fire officer and his army driver. Other drivers were making their own decisions, digging and grinding through the drifts as best they could.
They could come down here with a tea vehicle, even if they only give us a hot cup of tea. At least it shows they're interested in us.
The only thing we saw last night was a military police Land Rover. And that's the only thing we've seen with a blue light on it for about 12 hours.
On the motorways of the Midlands, the day continued as grimly. The M6 northbound at dusk, with stranded lorrymen fully expecting another night in their cabs. But with a thaw this afternoon, excavators managed to clear most main roads in town and city centres across the region. Out of town on the M6, the snowplows finally broke through earlier this evening. Police escorted all the trapped drivers to safety, but the motorway will stay closed as the snowplows continue their work and as abandoned vehicles are cleared.
Many isolated villages and farms in Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire remain cut off. Snowdrifts have completely buried some roads, and it'll be a while yet before delivery services are back to normal. The 7-year-old son of the Foreign Secretary, Douglas Hurd, was taken to hospital by helicopter with suspected appendicitis because an ambulance couldn't reach the family home in West Oxfordshire. Farmers and contractors have been helping to open up minor roads, but they haven't yet reached Addlestrop, where the 100 or so villagers are without a pub or shop. One family who wanted to get in had to complete the journey on foot.
We felt we had to come over because we had a pony in the field just over here who was completely snowed in yesterday, rescued by some people in the village, and we felt we had to come over and see how he was.
Villagers were without power and water for more than 24 hours.
We've got, fortunately, a little gas burner, a little butane thing, and we've managed to heat up soup and baked beans, but we couldn't cook any pheasants.
Milk had to be fetched by jug from the local farm, where the milk tanker had been unable to get through. People here, though, are making the best of the situation, and for most, it's been simply an inconvenience.
Motorists are being urged not to travel tonight unless their journeys are absolutely vital. Not much snow is forecast for tomorrow, but ice could still make driving dangerous. Train services should be closer to normal.
The Arctic weather has wreaked havoc on the country's railways. At Euston Station in London, as elsewhere, passengers faced long delays as services were disrupted by blocked lines and power failures. But British Rail hope a near-normal intercity service will be running tomorrow, although they predict local services will still be badly affected. Despite roads reopening, the AA is warning that tomorrow could see some of the most dangerous driving conditions of the past few days.
I think the great fear is that as we see the thaw of the snow that's occurred over much of the north and the Midlands of the country, as the temperatures plummet this evening, we could see ice rinks across much of the Midlands and north of England with very, very slippery road conditions. The warning which many police forces are giving out, and we're supporting, is that if you don't have to travel in these conditions, then obviously it's sensible not to. The safest thing you can do is stay off the roads and let other people travel if they have to, and let the police get on with the job of clearing up the abandoned vehicles that are in many parts of the country at the moment.
And there could be more bad weather on the way. Weathermen are predicting another cold snap with snowfalls next weekend.
More than 70 British hostages from Iraq are on their way home via Frankfurt tonight. Many more are due to leave tomorrow on an aircraft chartered by the British government. Over 300 Britons released from strategic sites are being joined in Baghdad by hundreds of others from Kuwait, all waiting for the next plane out.
At least 300 British hostages who've been kept at Iraqi strategic locations arrived in Baghdad today on the first leg of their journey home.
I'm not kissing him.
They're still arriving. The British Embassy has chartered an Iraqi jumbo jet to take them home tomorrow.
The following is a message from the State Department for U.S. citizens in Kuwait and Iraq. Our embassy in Baghdad has chartered an aircraft for Sunday.
That flight got back to Baghdad from Kuwait this evening, with British as well as American passengers. Raymond Grieve, on his way back from Kuwait to Manchester, said the Iraqis seemed to be able to pick up people at will.
It was a case of when they let hostages out by whatever, whether it's ex-prime ministers or Muhammad Ali or someone else takes someone out, we found the pressure right away because they just come and pick up the same number in Kuwait.
These men were detained in Kuwait late last week after hiding since the invasion. John Carr worried that his pet cockatoos would give him away.
I did have another bird, which was extremely noisy. And unfortunately, because it was terribly, terribly noisy, I'm afraid I rather upset myself when I had to dispose of it.
Two of the men spent a fortnight hiding in air conditioning ducts.
I mean, I could sit up in it. It's about, I haven't been in a coffin yet, but they're about that size. You know, they're a couple of feet by about 8-10 feet, I would say.
They only came out at night. Sometimes they could hear soldiers in adjoining rooms. Did it get to you at all?
After 2 weeks it did, yeah. After 2 weeks of doing it did. You had your book, you had your little Nido tent to have a toilet in, like. You had a light. But yeah, it does get to you. You can't move.
It will take days to bring all the hostages to Baghdad and on to the charter flights home. There may be hold-ups, but at least it's started. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Baghdad.
Iraq is considering whether to bring forward talks between the US Secretary of State James Baker and Saddam Hussein. The Americans complained that January the 12th, the date set by the Iraqis, was too late. Mr. Baker said if Saddam refused to meet him by January the 3rd, he wasn't serious about avoiding war.
As 21 American hostages arrived home in Texas today, their government was taking an increasingly tough line with Iraq on the proposed talks between Baghdad and Washington. Secretary of State James Baker now says he won't go to see Saddam Hussein any later than January the 3rd, and certainly not on January the 12th, as Iraq has suggested.
It is basically, yes, unacceptable to us, because if he is unwilling to pick any date on the 15 days between December 20 and January the 3rd, I think it shows that he is not serious, or that he wants to somehow delay the Security Council resolution. The suggestion of a date that is back right up to January 15 does not demonstrate seriousness. It's important that we have this discussion and that we have it reasonably early.
However, the Iraqi ambassador in New York said today there can be a compromise.
If it's not suitable to the Secretary of State or to the United States, I believe it should be no problem to find a more suitable date.
But if Iraq does not agree to a meeting much earlier than the UN deadline, the White House seems adamant these talks will not go ahead, even though Mr. Baker himself has described them as the last best chance for peace. Ben Brown, BBC News, Washington.
Lech Wałęsa, the Solidarity leader, looks certain to become Poland's new president. It's predicted that he's won a landslide victory in today's second round of elections, crushing a challenge from the millionaire expatriate businessman Stanisław Tominski.
The computers at the central counting office in Warsaw are still collating the official results, but the TV exit poll, which predicted the first round correctly, has already pronounced. The political novice Stanisław Tominski hasn't increased his first round score of 23%. It means that Lech Wałęsa, 10 years after he founded Solidarity, becomes president of Poland. He has an easy campaigning style, but he was robbed of outright victory in the first round, partly because of worries from many of his old allies in Solidarity that he's made promises to win the election which Poland can't afford. The man who destroyed communism isn't the man to build democracy.
Demolishing an evil system is essentially a simple thing. What we want to build now is a normal, complex, modern society. Wałęsa is still after simple solutions.
And Lech Wałęsa will have to remember the giant protest vote against him. Almost a quarter of the country followed Tominski's dreams.
Here, nearly 6 million people applied for shares in the newly privatised electricity companies. This makes it the most popular privatisation ever. Following the last-minute rush of applications, the government increased the number of shares available to the public. When the final details are announced tomorrow, it's expected all registered customers will get some shares, but fewer than many wanted. Cricket, and Australia beat England by 6 wickets in the latest World Series Cup game in Perth. Batting first, England made 192 for 9, but Australia passed that total with 9 overs to spare.
Fresh from the victory over New Zealand, England's batsmen initially promised further evidence of a return to form, with Smith and Larkins in aggressive mood. Alex Stewart also prospered on his way to a top score of 41. But then a more familiar story. Smith out to Rackerman, the first of 5 wickets to fall for just 28 runs in another mid-innings collapse. Tailender Martin Bicknell gave the innings a late flourish with an unbeaten 31, and England at least respectability with a total of 192 for 9. The target always looked within Australia's reach though, after openers Boone and Marsh had passed 50 with few alarms. By the time Marsh was second man out, the victim of Lewis's acrobatic catch, Australia were more than halfway to their target, and Dean Jones was on his way to the Man of the Match award for an unbeaten 63. Appropriately, it was Jones who clinched the victory, Australia making the runs for the loss of only 4 wickets with 9 overs to spare.
And that's it from the newsroom this weekend. Good night.
Good evening to you. Some more cold and wintry weather, I think, to come for many of us. Tomorrow, the most noticeable thing is going to be the return of those quite bitterly cold easterly winds as this area of low pressure squeezes ever closer. In fact, that's going to be bringing some outbreaks of rain, sleet and snow in the process to many southern areas during the course of tonight. But here come those winds rushing across the southern North Sea and over those southern parts of the country, and they're going to have quite a bite to them tomorrow. A lot of cloud, you notice, over the continent already, some very nasty weather there, and that's beginning to head our way. In fact, overnight in the southern half of the country, through Wales as well, you will have a good deal of cloud, and there will be these outbreaks of rain, sleet and snow working their way westwards. Several inches of snow to come on parts of the West Country moors, for instance, Salisbury Plain, the Cotswolds and that sort of area. Although I think as the night goes on, most of the snow tending to turn to rain and fizzling out. Temperatures in the south holding just about above freezing. Quite a sharp frost to come, though, further north. And then tomorrow, well, a two-way split for the southern half of the country, remaining pretty cloudy, again with some, chiefly by then, light rain and sleet scattered around. A much brighter picture further north with some sunshine, a scattering of showers in the north and in the east, but in the south certainly feeling bitterly cold, and in fact a cold day everywhere. Good evening to you.
Monday evening on BBC One, and after Wogan at 7, Watchdog at 7:30 investigates the effects of anti-aging creams.
I think that they will damage the skin. The skin will get looser and you'll get more wrinkles.
At 8, the tension builds in Teleaddicts.
Yes, the weeks and weeks of preparation are over. We're here at the final of Teleaddicts 1990.
At 8:30, some mothers do have them. At 9:30, Panorama follows former Cabinet Minister Nicholas Ridley across Europe as Britain prepares for the Intergovernmental Conference on European Integration. At 10:10, hard-hitting action in Mancuso, FBI.
Okay, that was great. Really great.
At 11, Brian Ferry and Jerry Hall feature in the rock and roll years. And with Advice Shop at 11:30, this is Monday evening on BBC One.
Now on BBC One, Everyman. It's 16 years since bombs in 2 Birmingham pubs killed 21 people and left 106 others injured. 6 men were sentenced to life imprisonment for the murders. This year, the Home Secretary has for the second time referred their convictions to the Court of Appeal. Since their imprisonment, their children have grown up, and many have become parents themselves. Tonight, Everyman talks to some of the wives and daughters of the Birmingham Six about how women cope with bringing up children when their husbands are in jail, and about their campaign to prove the men's innocence.